And we have live closed captioning on. You can turn that off or change it by clicking the CC button on your Zoom desktop or mobile app. We're recording this event as you should have been alerted when you logged in, and we will share this recording with you afterwards so you have it and you can share it with folks. We'll be posting it publicly. And you can use the reaction button on Zoom if you have a question. You can use the raise hand button. If you want us to slow down, please use the slow down button. Just a few options for you. And we'll have time for questions at the end. Put questions in the Q&A box on Zoom, and we'll also give folks an opportunity to unmute themselves if you prefer that. So before the event, we sent you an event brief that was a 3-page Google Doc with a lot of information that we're going to be covering today. And we also have some slides. So I'm going to drop those 2 links in the chat as well, so you have them before we get started here. Excuse me. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Helena Berger, who is a co-founder of RevUp Virginia, to talk about, why we're all here today. Take it away, Helena.
Thanks so much. Welcome, everybody. And thank you for joining us. And I want to thank Verified Voting for today's webinar. I'm sure we're going to all leave a lot smarter at the end of the webinar than where we are today when it comes to accessible voting. Today's webinar coincides with the kickoff of Disability Voting Rights Week, which is September 11th to the 15th. You can find information about events that RevUp Virginia is doing through our social media, which we'll post our platforms via chat. I know we have some new folks joining us today, which we're excited about. So if you're new to RevUp Virginia, our primary objective is to increase the political power of disabled Virginians. And I believe we're actually making a difference. This past July, a recent study was put out by the U.S. Election Assistance Commission and Rutgers University on disability and voter turnout in the 2022 election. And it revealed that disabled and non-disabled voters in Virginia voted at the same rate. It was 52.3%. If you compare that to the rate in 2018, which was the last midterm election, there was 11.5% gap. So in 4 years, we went from 11.5% to 0. So no doubt, I think all the work that we're doing is really having an input. But I think this is just the beginning. We all need to keep educating and organizing and mobilizing our communities to show up, get registered and vote. The power and influence of the disability vote can translate into meaningful change, and I believe a better future for all of us. So again, I don't want to take up more time. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Our coalition, the RevUp Virginia Coalition, meets once a month. It's the first Thursday of the month at 4 p.m. You can join this coalition by emailing us. It's revupvirginia@gmail.com, which we are going to be, I think my co-chair, Susan Leidick, just put it into chat. So again, just thank you, everyone. And I anticipate a great webinar.
Thanks so much, Helena. I'm going to resend the links that I just posted so that they're clickable, and I'll share the information that Susan just sent to me so everyone has it. A little bit about Verified Voting. We are a nonpartisan national nonprofit that promotes the responsible use of technology in our elections. We want to help ensure that voters have justified confidence when they vote and know that their votes count. We've done a lot of work with our advocates in Virginia, like the League of Women Voters and now RevUp. And we have a lot of, great rapport, and, we've worked greatly with state and local election officials across Virginia. So our team includes experts on election security and voting technology. We have a ton of information about voting equipment and the voting process, and we're really excited to share it with you. So with that, I'm going to turn it to Megan Meyer, our Senior Program and Partnerships Associate.
Thank you, Corey. Hi, everybody. As Corey said, I'm Megan Meyer. I use she, her pronouns. I am a white woman with curly blonde shoulder length hair. I have blue eyes, no glasses today. I'm wearing a black sleeveless top with a silver necklace, and I'm sitting in a beige room just outside of Las Vegas. And behind me is a canvas print of a mountain lake, and below that is a credenza with books and succulents and photos on it. So first, I'm going to just cover some changes and important things to note about voting in Virginia in 2023 and 2024. So first, the witness requirement. This year, a bill repealed the witness requirement for absentee ballots. So now you'll include your date of birth and the last 4 digits of your social security number on your ballot return envelope. Instead of your social security number, you can also include a unique identifier that will be assigned to every voter. On voter ID, in-person voters have to prove who they are with an identity document or by signing a form just affirming you are who you claim to be. So to prove this, driver's licenses, even if they're expired, student IDs, tribal IDs, or a utility bill if it's from within the last year that includes your name and address, those are all acceptable forms of ID. For first-time mail voters, if you're voting for the first time by mail in Virginia, you need to send a copy of your ID with your registration application. If you didn't do that, it's okay. You'll get a notice informing you that you need to include proof of your identity when you return your ballot. And the ID requirements are the same as for in-person voters. On voter assistance, you can bring anyone with you to help you vote as long as it's not your employer or your union representative. And an election worker can also help you in the voting process if you want. Lastly, on guardianship, if you're under a limited guardianship decree, you should still have the right to vote unless that decree contains an express order. If you're under a full guardianship, meaning the guardian makes all decisions for you, you're likely unable to be able to vote. One last tip, check your registration. If you're not registered, you can do so online or by mail or in person at your registrar's office, at the library, at the DMV, Department of Social Services, or many other departments. So I'll next focus on in-person voting on Election Day. And I will talk about other ways and times to vote too. First, on Election Day, you'll go to your assigned polling place. If you do go to the wrong polling place, you won't be allowed to vote there, but they will direct you to the correct polling place. What you should expect. So federal law requires every polling place on Election Day to have at least one accessible device set up. And by set up, we mean working, ready for you to vote on it. Federal law also requires that voting locations are physically accessible. The focus here is on folks with mobility impairments. So this means accessible parking with signs, push button doors, signs directing you through the accessible route into the voting area. In many cases, these are going to be temporary changes like cones set up to make an accessible parking spot or the door propped open on Election Day. In Virginia, I also wanted to note that polling places have notepads for communicating and writing, and magnifying devices are available. So next I'll talk about the process. So when you get to the polling place, you'll check in on a poll book. Most localities now use electronic poll books. So just an electronic version of a paper poll book or paper roster that lists all voters who are eligible to vote in that polling place. Most of these are on tablets like an iPad. Some are on laptop computers. So a poll worker might scan your ID if you brought one with a scanner gun or using the tablet's camera. Some localities, typically the localities that have the fewest number of registered voters, still do use paper poll books. Or paper poll books could be used even in some of the larger jurisdictions if there's a failure for some reason with an electronic poll book. This is a standard backup procedure, and it's good that they have paper backups. So after you've checked in, the election workers will direct you to a private voting booth. If you're marking your paper ballot using a pen, you'll take that ballot with you. And the voting booth might be set up as table and chairs, or for standing, or accessible to folks who are using wheelchairs. There's probably a mix of these different options. If you're marking your paper ballot using a pen, just follow the instructions of the election workers about which pen to use, as the preference may vary by the manufacturer of the scanner. And we'll talk more about scanners in a little bit. If you're using a ballot marking device to mark your ballot, then you'll proceed to a private voting booth with an accessible device. So depending on the ballot marking device or BMD and the electronic poll book that may be used in your locality, you might take a blank paper ballot card, which is typically about half the size of a piece of printer paper, letter paper, or you'll take a receipt with you with a ballot code on it that will help you start your voting session on the machine, or an election worker might accompany you to initiate the session for you. They may need to use a special key to start that voting session for you. So also there may be many different BMDs, or I should say many of the same kind of BMD set up at your polling place, but not every machine may be set up the same way with all of the accessible ancillary pieces of equipment. So for example, not every BMD may have a tethered tactile controller set up on it. All accessible machines in Virginia are BMDs, and I'll talk more about the specifics in just a moment. But I wanted to note that for all of the BMDs used in Virginia, they can all be equipped with audio tactile interfacing, so ATI, and I'm talking about headphones, a tethered tactile controller, and compatibility with sip and puff technology. They all will allow you to increase the font size and the contrast on the screen. They prevent overvoting, so voting for too many candidates in one race. And they're all from 2014 or are more recent than that. So if you haven't voted since, say, the 2016 election, you may be using a different machine. So now votes are not recorded directly into the voting machine. So you do need to retrieve your paper ballot from the ballot marking device and scan it on a tabulator, which again, I'll talk about in a moment. You may also place it into a container, a ballot box, for later tabulation. So we're going to cover all of the different BMDs that are used in the state, but we're just going to play videos from the BMDs that are used in the largest number of localities, or those used in the jurisdictions that have the highest number of registered voters. And as Corey mentioned previously, she's shared links in the chat, and we'll also share the links again in an email after this webinar. So you can dig deeper into the specific type of equipment that's used in your locality. And as we go through, I'll describe the image that we're displaying in the slide, and then I'll also talk generally about the equipment, things that may not be discernible from the image that we're displaying. So the first ballot marking device that I'm going to talk about is the ES&S Express Vote. ES&S is Election Systems and Software. And this machine is used in 53 localities, including the cities of Richmond, Colonial Heights, Newport News, and Martinsville, as well as the counties of Prince Edward, Stafford, Spotsylvania, and Allegheny. The express votes in use in Virginia have been used since 2016 and more recent elections. So the image that we're displaying on the screen is a white, thin tablet-style machine with a blue touchscreen. It's positioned on a black base. A white person's hand is inserting the ballot card into a slot at the lower right of the machine. On the left side of the machine is the touch screen, which is blue in this image. And below the touch screen are ATI inputs, like a headphone jack. The ballot card that the voter is holding is 4 1/4 inches. And this is inserted into and printed out from the slot on the lower right of the machine. So these ballot cards, as I mentioned, are smaller than, they're about half the size of a piece of printer paper, and they're summary ballots, meaning they only list the choices that you make They don't list all of the different choices in every race once you print it out. We're going to play a video that will explain more about this. I just want to note that it's from North Dakota, so their terminology may be different, but this is a comprehensive overview of how to use this machine. Sorry, we're having an audio issue right now. I realize the video is playing. We'll try to go back and just make sure that there's also audio. Zoom has special requirements for how to play audio. Sorry about that, folks.
Hold on 1 second. I might need to be unmuted. So let me try this again, and hopefully the audio will work as it did during our dress rehearsal. 1 moment. Thanks, Megan.
You will receive a ballot. The ballot will have a cut in the top
Is it working now? Okay, thank you. All right, I'm gonna play it through, and let's do this.
corner. You will insert the ballot with the cut corner on your right side. The ballot will then be inserted into the machine. There is also Braille located at the bottom of the machine where the ballot is inserted. The poll questions will then appear on the screen. You can mark your selection by simply touching the screen. Once you mark a selection, the color of the selection will change. There are next and previous buttons located on the bottom of the screen. To go to the next or previous screen, you simply touch the buttons. If you decide to pick a new choice on the screen, it will override your previous choice. If you do not wish to vote on a poll question, you can simply leave it blank. The screen can be enlarged by clicking the zoom button. If you wish to make the screen larger, you simply push the zoom button once. To make it smaller, you hit the zoom button again. You can exit at any time by touching the exit button on the screen. If you want to exit the poll completely, you will hit the next button. If you decide you want to continue voting, you will hit the previous button on the bottom of the screen. If you wish to write in a candidate, you will simply push Write In. A keyboard will appear on the screen and you can write in the candidate's name. Once you have entered the candidate's name, you will hit Accept. The write-in name will appear on the final screen and on the marked ballot. You will see there is a headphone option on the Express Vote machine. If you wish to use the headphone feature, you can simply put the headphones on. The machine will then read the ballot to you. I want to note that some of the poll questions, you will be able to pick more than one candidate. If you pick 3 candidates instead of 2, the machine will let you know that you overvoted and ask you to remove a selection. The contrast can be adjusted on the Express Vote machine. Click on the contrast button and it will make the screen darker. If you do not like the screen dark, you can click the contrast button again and it will go back to a lighter screen. Measures will be on the ballot. These are generally yes or no questions. You will be able to make one selection. When you get to the final screen, you will be able to go back and make changes to your ballot. You are able to do this by clicking on the poll question you would like to change. If you would like to leave a selection blank, the Express Vote machine will allow you to do so. The remote can be used to provide more privacy. If you choose to utilize the remote, the headphone feature is available while using the remote. The remote also has Braille on it to easily direct you to navigate while using it. When you are finished voting and have reviewed your selections, you can select Print Card. Your card will then be printed for you.
I think that is the summary that we think is most excuse me, relevant for Virginia.
Thanks, Corey. So this is Megan again, and I'm going to next talk about Unison, Open Elect, FVT, and their OVI, which is Open Elect Voting Interface. The FVT, this stands for Freedom Vote Tablet. These are, I'm talking about them together because they're both made by the same company. But so the FVT is a newer type of ballot marking device. Only Montgomery County currently uses this ballot marking device just since the last election. But localities that are currently using the OVI, which I will talk about in a moment, may upgrade to this ballot marking device. We keep our map updated so you can always check back and find out if they have upgraded. So now I'll describe the FVT, which is a tall, slim black tablet. In this image, it has a blank blue screen. It's positioned on top of a gray and black base that houses a small printer to the right of the tablet, and the tactile controller, which in this image is labeled ADA keyboard optional, is to the left, tethered to the left of the device. The FVT is about 15 inches tall, the touchscreen is, and like the Express Vote, which was the video that we just played, the FVT prints out a summary paper ballot. So again, just the selections that you've made, not all of the choices that were on the ballot. And next, the OVI, which is again made by the same company, but is just the older version of this technology, is used in 32 localities currently. That includes the counties of Greene, Middlesex, and Augusta, as well as the city of Fairfax. Some localities have used this equipment since 2014, so it's possible they will be upgrading to the FVT or a different ballot marking device. This might happen before the 2024 election, but again, the information that we share on our map is always as current as we have it. So we are constantly updating with the newest information. The OVI also prints out a summary ballot. So again, that smaller ballot card that just shows the selections that you've made. The image that we're displaying on the screen right now is a small black tablet screen positioned on top of a gray and black base. There's a small printer to the right of the screen. This screen is about 7 inches wide and it's white in this image. The tactile controller is tethered to the right of this device, and there are headphones positioned on the left. Next, I'm going to talk about another manufacturer's machine. This ballot marking device is the Hart InterCivic Verity Touch Writer. This is similar to the other ballot marking devices and similar to the Express Vote, which was the video that we played. But what's different about this ballot marking device is that it uses a commercial printer to print out a full size. So if you have a printer at home, that same size of paper, it prints out a full size ballot and fills in ovals for the selections that you make. So it's not a summary ballot card. This ballot marking device is used in 19 localities, including Madison County. And the different localities began using this ballot marking device in 2016 or 2018. And the image that we're displaying on the slide right now is an open white and blue case positioned on top of a table with a white tablecloth. Inside the case is the voting machine with a large blue touchscreen on a white base. There's a tethered tactile interface and small thermal printer. To the right of the unit is a black square printer. And to the right of that on another table is another voting machine unit. And just to note, I mentioned an integrated thermal printer that prints out information for the poll workers, that does not print out the ballot. So again, the ballot prints out from the printer full size. The smaller printer that's connected to the machine, that's integrated in the machine, is just information for the poll workers about like how many people voted on that machine that day. And lastly, for ballot marking devices is the Dominion ImageCast Evolution, or ICE machine. This is different from the other ballot marking devices, but it does provide similar accessible interfacing. It's different because it's also a scanner, which I'll talk about more in a moment, but the two components are separate and they can operate at the same time. So currently 28 localities, including the city of Bradford and the counties of Dickinson and Cumberland, use the ICE machine. And the localities began using this machine as long ago as 2014. So quickly, I will describe the image on the slide, and then we'll play a video that discusses this machine and how it works. So here the image is showing a black container positioned on wheels. There's a large silver door with the words Dominion Voting on the side. On top of the container is a black ballot scanner and an upward angled black privacy partition surrounding an LCD screen. So the screen, which in this image is on the left of the device, tilts upward, and the ballot is inserted by the voter into a slot below. The ballots then are stored in the container in a storage receptacle that make up the bottom 2/3 of this machine. So Corey is going to play a video that will describe this a little bit more. And again, this video is not from Virginia, it's from Florida. So there may be some terminology that's different and some statements about their history, but it should be helpful.
The ImageCast Evolution, or ICE unit, is an all-in-one paper-based tabulation system. The ICE unit is comprised of a tabulator and a ballot box and follows the exact same process as the previous system. Each voter must complete their ballot in a privacy booth and then insert the ballot into the tabulator. The optical scanner will alert the voter scanning ballot in progress. Once the ballot has been accepted, the screen will read "Ballot accepted." The ballot is dropped into the ballot box and a chime will sound confirming the vote was cast. The screen will change to reflect the total vote count has increased by 1. If there are any issues with the ballot, the tabulator will alert the voter with a message. Additionally, this tabulator acts as an accessible voting system for persons with disabilities. We are happy to announce that Hernando County will be pioneering ADA sessions on the ICE unit with the help of an external monitor. Any voter who requires use of the ADA component will be able to vote on the same tabulating machine without interrupting the flow of other voters casting their ballots. The ImageCast Evolution voting system is an exciting upgrade and will help us to conduct elections and be a better service to you.
Great, thank you. So as that video was just indicating, the final process when you're voting is scanning your ballot. And so I will now talk about that last part. When you proceed to a scanner, to scan your ballot. So whether you mark your ballot using a pen or a ballot marking device, you proceed to a scanner or tabulator, which is likely in a somewhat separate part of the voting area, but as indicated with the ICE machine, because it's tethered to the ballot marking device, those are likely closer together. So very important is checking your ballot before you scan it. And if there are any concerns that you have or you want to make any changes, you can ask for a new ballot. So Virginia localities use one of 6 different scanners. The ICE is one of those. And there are 4 manufacturers. We've already talked about them. The scanner that's used in each locality is made by the same manufacturer as the ballot marking device. And all of the scanners are from 2014 or are newer. Most of these scanners are very similar. The ICE machine is a little bit different, but even there, the voting process is very similar. So the process for tabulation is that you'll put your ballot into the scanner lengthwise, and any orientation should be okay. Upside down is okay. And there should be a poll worker near the scanner to assist voters and to tell voters how to put the ballot in, and that upside down or backward is okay. As the election official mentioned in that video that we just played, you may receive an error message, should be both audio and visual, indicating if you've overvoted, for example. And so you can ask for a new ballot. You can scan it anyway, but I do suggest that you mark a new ballot because overvoted contests will not be counted. And if you do mark a new ballot, that first one will not count. They'll spoil your ballot and you'll only have your votes counted one time. If your ballot is accepted, you'll get an audio or visual or both confirmation, just like in the video. There should be a ding, like we heard, or like was indicated in the video. And there's typically an American flag or a thank you for voting message that displays on the screen. So if you have any concerns about whether your ballot was accepted, I hope you do feel empowered to ask an election worker who, again, should be nearby for help. An important note on scanners, sometimes paper does jam in scanners. And so a very typical normal procedure is to have an auxiliary bin or a bag, some sort of receptacle that isn't connected to the scanner, but is used to collect ballots. And in no case should you be required to leave your ballot, say, open on a table. If an election worker directs you to do this, you can find a more senior election worker or call the hotline that we'll mention in a moment. I'm going to discuss some other types of voting besides just on election day. So early in-person absentee voting. In 2020, Virginia began allowing no excuse in-person absentee voting, which is early voting. And this allows you to go to your registrar's office or another satellite location, beginning 45 days before election day and ending the Saturday before election day. There's also curbside voting, which allows you to have a ballot brought to your vehicle instead of entering a polling place or an early voting location. In Virginia, this is for folks who are 65 or older or for folks who have a disability. And you can request that you have a VMD brought to your vehicle as well. There should be a sign for curbside voting with a phone number that connects you to an election worker who's inside to let them know that you're there. Absentee voting from wherever you live or wherever you're traveling at the time allows you to use a paper mail ballot or the accessible absentee ballot, which is compatible with screen readers or tabbing navigation. So voters with visual impairments or print disabilities are eligible in Virginia to use the accessible absentee ballot. And this system has been used in the state since 2020. It's changed a little bit just as of last year, but you may not even notice a difference. It's still the same company. So this ballot has to be printed. You can't return it online. And either method of absentee voting that you use, you must return your absentee ballot postmarked on or before Election Day and received by the registrar's office by noon on the third day following the election. So a little bit about your rights as a voter and who to contact if something goes wrong. Poll workers are trained to help you and to know how to work your machine and all of the machines that are used in your polling place. This is unfortunately not always the reality. Election offices are understaffed and underfunded. Poll workers are not always properly trained on every piece of equipment. So if they don't know what they're doing, or if you're uncomfortable with something that they've told you, like you don't want them to mark the ballot for you, but they don't know how to get the machine to work, or if you're unable to confirm your choices without assistance, contact the Election Protection Hotline, which has several different numbers and ways of contacting, and we'll share all of that information in a moment. You can reach out before you cast your vote and before you feel like you need to leave the polling place. We really hope you feel empowered to stay and to make sure that your vote is counted. So the slide that we are displaying on the screen right now is contact information if something goes wrong or if you have questions. The election protection hotlines are there to answer questions about your polling place or even help you figure out whether you're registered. So in English, the number to call is 866-OUR-VOTE. That's OURVOTE. The numbers are 866-687-8683. There's also Spanish, Arabic, and Asian languages hotlines. And then there's a text option, and you can text Our Vote. Again, it's OURVOTE to 97779. The National Association of the Deaf also has an ASL video line, and that number is 301-818-VOTE, which is 301-818-8683. You can also submit a complaint to Virginia Voter Complaints. We're including a link to the website where to do that, or contact the accessibility coordinator at the Department of Elections, who is Claire Scott, at adavoter@elections.virginia.gov. There's a TTY number, it's 711, and then a call number is 800-552-9745. There are also some very important dates for you to note. So again, early voting, which is relatively new since 2020, begins this year, September 22nd, which is very, very soon somehow. And then October 16th is the last day to register to vote or update your registration. And November 7th is Election Day. And the hours for the polls being open are from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. And remember, if you're in line at 7 p.m., you are allowed to vote. If someone tells you otherwise, please reach out to the Election Protection Hotline. I hope you all feel empowered and are interested in the voting equipment that's in use in your locality. I'm going to turn it back to Corey for Q&A. We're open to all sorts of questions, but we can all be reached as well after this webinar, so you don't have to ask your question right now.
Megan, our first question is asking for clarity about what overvoting is.
Great question. So overvoting is something that can be done when you overvoting, I'll start with the definition, is when you vote for too many contestants in one race, or if you voted, for example, yes and no to a ballot question. And it's something that can be easy to do by accident when you have a vote for two candidates in one race, or when you write in a name. So if you vote for Cookie Monster in the Sesame Street election and also write in Cookie Monster below, that's an overvote. So if you are filling in an oval or making a selection on your ballot for one candidate, you don't also write in their name, because then it just cancels out your vote in that race. It does not cancel your whole ballot, but it will not count your vote for that race.
Thanks. Let's see here. We have a question about, you said a lot about what poll workers should be doing. What are some things that they should not be doing when I'm voting?
So poll workers should not be asking questions about your disability or whether you have a qualifying disability, especially if you're voting curbside. I understand that this sometimes happens. If a poll worker is helping you to make your selections for you on a paper ballot or on a ballot marking device, they should not be loudly announcing your vote selections. They can confirm with you, but I hope that you'll feel comfortable that your votes are private. And when you're in that voting booth, it should be only you. And if you do have a poll worker helping you, it should be only you and that person who know what your vote selections are.
And I'm going to ask another question that we received in advance, but before I do that, does anyone, I'm going to turn on my view for everyone who's here right now. Does anyone want to ask a question verbally? If so, you can hit that raise hand button and I can unmute you. We also have some other questions we can plug for Megan. Okay, I have another question here. What to do? I tried to vote in 2016 and my name wasn't on the list. What do I do if I go to vote at my polling place and it's not on the list again?
So one thing that you can do ahead of time is to check your registration status online. If you do go to a polling place and your name isn't on the list there, you can vote a provisional ballot if you believe that you are eligible to vote in that polling place, or if you're using the same day registration process, or if you forgot to bring an acceptable ID and you don't sign the ID confirmation statement that is allowed in Virginia, you can vote provisional. But I do really encourage folks to check their registration ahead of time and even use that election protection hotline number, and they can direct you to the correct place to figure out if you are registered. You can also contact your registrar. This is all, again, ahead of time, and we keep the contact information for every registrar on our website. So you can find that information and just do as much as you can ahead of time. But again, if you get to the polling place and you're not on the list, they should be able to look up where your correct polling place is. But if you are certain that that is your correct polling place, you can vote a provisional ballot on that day.
Thanks, Megan. We included a link to where you can check your voter registration in the event brief, and we'll be sending that out after the webinar concludes as well. So you have a couple of different options. And I'll also note that information was shared in the chat that if you experience a problem voting at your polling place, or any problem really, you can contact the Disability Law Center if you feel like your rights were violated while voting. And the number for that is 804-225-2042. And we'll include that in our materials afterwards as well. We have a question. What about the tactile part of the machine that is attached and used by blind and low vision voters? You haven't really described that.
So these are different for each of the different ballot marking devices, but typically they will have arrows that allow voters to scroll up, down, right, and left. And then there are buttons for making a selection and deselection. The different videos, or the Express Vote video that we played had a little bit about that and how there was Braille on the tactile controller. So these will all be tethered to the machines and they should be similar, but we can share more information for each of the different ballot marking devices that are used in Virginia so that you can have that precise information for the equipment that's used in your locality.
What about, can you talk about the ability for a voter to fill out a ballot online by contacting the city registrar?
Yes. So for the remote ballot marking system, which is available, so you do need to apply to use that. And I can talk a little bit more about how the system works, but I think the question is how to apply to use it. So when you are doing your application, so let's see, I think I said it's open to voters with visual impairments or print disabilities. And so there's an option on the absentee ballot application. It's section 7C. And so that's where you can select print disability. And that will give you the option to use the accessible absentee ballot. And so you'll do this, you'll have to, again, you can contact your registrar to get more information and to make sure that you are registered to use the accessible absentee ballot. But so that application happens when you're applying to use an absentee ballot. So you do need to make that application as soon as possible.
I think we have time for maybe 2 more questions. We have one about how do I know that my county's elections office received my ballot? Can you talk a little bit about ballot tracking?
Yes. So Virginia does have ballot tracking, which is great. So we can share a link for this, but Ballot Scout is one way to track your ballot. And what you can actually do is track your ballot on the way to you and then back to the elections office and make sure that it was received. And so, of course, as soon as you're able to return your ballot, the sooner the better. But I personally always like to track my ballot. And so Ballot Scout is one way that is offered, and Corey's put the link in the chat, in Virginia to make sure that your ballot makes it back and is accepted, because that's an important part of it too, of course.
Great, and I'm gonna pause for a second to ensure that we don't have any more hand raises or any folks that might want to unmute. And I think we're almost at time here, but you know, Megan, I think it might be helpful for people here to know a little bit more about sorry, one second, I'm pulling up my notes from this. The you know, when you should contact your local elections office, and like where you can go to find accurate information about elections.
So definitely your local election office is the place to contact and place to turn for the most accurate information. Certainly, there is mis and disinformation that abounds, but your local election office will be able to share the correct information for where you live, because again, this could be different across the state. As we talked about, there are different types of machines used in different localities. And so there can be information out there about one type of machine that isn't even used in your locality. So definitely turning to your local offices. And so we do track that information, but you can also look, and this is shared in the chat just now. You can use the Virginia elections website to find your contact information for your election official. And they are really there to serve you as voters. And I think they would not mind if I just share on their behalf that they would love to share information. They do not mind getting questions about equipment or timelines or what is required of you to fill out an application for that accessible absentee ballot, for example. These are all things that folks in the office will be able to give you the most accurate and detailed information. And you may also want to contact them if, for example, you want to vote curbside during early voting, and you really want to make sure that when you arrive at that voting location, that there is someone who's going to be ready to assist you and possibly bring a ballot marking device out to your vehicle. So you can call them ahead of time and just check in and say, here's when I'm coming. Will this equipment be ready for me? There are lots of questions that you might have, and I won't try to guess all of them, but truly reach out if you have any questions or want clarity about any of the things that we've talked about, of course, to us, but definitely to your local registrar's office.
I think that's a great way to wrap up this webinar today. You know, we really appreciate everyone joining us today. We hope you found this informative. You know, something I think about a lot is that it's really up to all of us to be informed and prepared when we vote, and to have as much information as we can. So you all took a really big step today, a really big action by showing up to this webinar. And I think a really great next action is to share some of the information that we provided today. So one thing that you'll be receiving after the webinar concludes, I can't promise today, but sometime within the next few days, is you know, a follow-up email from us with, you know, links to information that we shared, new questions that popped up today that we might not have had answers to on the fly, and you know, really help provide, you know, a one-stop shop for everything that we shared today. We'll also share a link to the video recording of this that will have the captions, and we'll be posting it on our YouTube channel, that you can, you know, easily share with people within your networks. You know, you know, we all have to help each other learn this information sometimes. So we'll also be including our contact information for Rev Up and for verified voting. And reach out to us if you have questions about anything. If you have feedback about today's webinar, we really welcome that. So thank you. Thank you, Helena and Susan, for inviting us to co-host this today. It was wonderful to work with you all on this. And I guess go vote this November, everyone. I will close this out now and have a wonderful day.